My name is Mark Haynes. I was at first drawn into this cap and trade policy because it seems that it would reduce our dependence on foreign oil. And those who don't look further might believe that. So you may have 20% of the populace out there who says, okay, this is a good thing. You know, we've got to do something. This is something. Let's do it, as you say. I think the most powerful thing for the Republicans to do is have an alternative plan to change the economic incentives. Oil is the cheapest form of energy for us most of the time until it spikes to $4 a gallon. And over history, every time the U.S. has an alternative plan, electric cars start coming in. We were going to convert to natural gas cars in the early 1990s. We had the Synthetic Fuels Corporation that went from 1980 to 85. And incidentally, anecdotally, in 1985, when the Synthetic Fuels Corporation was making a barrel of oil for $40 a barrel, OPEC dropped the price of oil from $38 a barrel to $22 a barrel within 1 year and killed the whole thing. Synthetic Fuels Corporation was gone. We could have been making oil for $40 a barrel right now. So how do you change the economic incentives? And
you begin by educating the public, and unfortunately we are letting people get by with a lot of sloppy rhetoric. The President went to Nellis Air Force Base the other day and talked about windmills and solar panels as a way to reduce our dependence on foreign oil, showing he's either utterly illiterate on the issues of energy. I didn't know we were burning a lot of oil for electricity.
3%,
or he's expecting that we are.
3% of our
right, which is he's in a 1970s mindset when we switched toward gas and more coal.
But still,
and
oil is
and then we
cheapest.
get this, well, shouldn't we be, I saw an ad for sun chips yesterday. There's an awful lot of sun in the world. Shouldn't we use some of it? Yeah, why didn't I think of that? It's funny, those farmers ought to go out there and plant some crops. And we ought to begin investing in solar, but I want my $50 billion in plunder from the taxpayer over the past 5 decades.
Mm-hmm. But I'm not talking
subsidies
solar,
for windmills, solar panels, and other alternative energies. If you're going to get away with the rhetoric of, shouldn't we begin investing? And the people believe, well, shouldn't we begin investing? That's BP's ad campaign. Shouldn't we begin investing? No. We've been investing for decades, and until you show me pixie dust, we have wasted our money. These are windmills. My wife's from Denmark. I assure you, windmills are not new technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You change the rhetoric, you change the population's level of education.
The only problem is that foreign oil is cheaper than windmills.
The only thing we can do about foreign sources of oil is, hey, lecture our neighbors, Mexico, that when you have state control of resources, you see production drop. What do you know? It happens every time. We're on that path. Yeah. Look at Venezuela. Look at Mexico. Why can't the state do things as efficiently as real people? I just don't know. But why don't we unlock our resources first? We are the only country in the world so arrogant as to believe those Cubans really ought to go get that oil in the Gulf, not us and the Chinese, because they have our best interests at heart.
It's more expensive to drill for oil in the Gulf than it is to
it's more
import
expensive
it.
To produce oil in Canada, too. But you know what? There are costs and there are benefits. The problem is when you chase oil out of the market, you chase the high-cost producers out first. Who are they? Our friends. It's actually, there's a low-carbon fuel standard. It's called LCFS, and people call it less competition for Saudis. It's because it chases Canadian oil out of the market.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, I could propose an import tax. If we simply had an import tax against OPEC, that would solve the problem. But there are other ways.
And for the record, this is not a Republican rally. This is not a Republican versus Democrat issue. I mean, we're trying to talk about common sense here. Okay.
That's the kind of question I have. Where does Bill Nelson stand on this? Do you know?
Have to ask Bill Nelson.
Well, you know, because everyone says what they can do, I think if they start getting their friends, everybody's friends, emailing the people that are going to be against it politically because they're going to vote with their party, you get to Obama, you write to Bill Nelson, and you get enough people that are just people writing to them, he's going to face an election here coming up pretty soon. And I think that's the best way that we can write our Republicans too, but obviously the Republicans are going to be a better chance of wanting to defeat it. But you need to get to the people that have a stake in voting it politically, which is Bill Nelson and Obama, and they get enough, they'll change their vote if they realize.
Mr. Nelson, can I address that? Without addressing Mr. Nelson, I'll give you an example of how to move a lawmaker. Evan Bayh is a self-styled moderate senator from Indiana. A lot of people raised concerns about this issue. Indiana gets 95% of its electricity from coal, much of it pulled from the ground in Indiana. Senator Bayh now writes letters. I do a weekly radio show in Indy, so they send me their constituent correspondence, and they're beautiful. They're works of art. Greatest threat, gonna act, but don't worry, only if it doesn't cost anything. You know what? You can't square those two statements, and I'm okay with that. You just said, I'm not going to impose this agenda if it's going to cost you. Now, if his next response is, of course, I figured out through offsets and other ways, and we're going to have some rebates that a lot of you won't really, that I can rationalize that this really doesn't cost many of you, then we have a problem. But what Senator Bayh has decided is that this is where my typical voting block is. However, my state is right here, and what I'm telling them is, big threat, I really am concerned, I'm going to act, but only if it doesn't hurt you. That means you're not going to act because by definition, if you're going to do something, you have to make it hurt. And if that's where all of the senators come down, that's fine, because here's what they're doing privately. They're telling the House, don't send it this way. Red Rover, do not send this thing over. They're telling the conservatives, dead, please don't do it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Frank Plata, friend of Bill Posey. That's my political party. I believe the best way to do this is probably to get the cat out of the bag, just to probably tell people exactly how much it costs per person. This is going to be, I see numbers of 700 per person or per family, or we need to put those numbers down into format that people will understand. Once they see that, they will realize what the next step is coming from this administration, which will be trying to impose a national sales tax, 15%, some are talking 25%. So once we see exactly what these guys are talking about it, then they will realize that it's nothing about saving energy, nothing about green effects. They're only talking about taxes, and that's what I believe. This is the format that we need to put, to the people. Yeah, thank you.
The amendments in the Energy and Commerce Committee that mostly Republicans supported were, we'll suspend this if unemployment hits 15%, and it can be tied to this. There had to be an assessment that, nope. Even if unemployment hits 15%, we're not going to suspend this law. They said if gas gets 5, 10, how many dollars a gallon? No. And so on. So you'll see that, remember, by definition, it has to hurt. And the president said in his budget, $300 billion a year, which is almost 3 times as big as the biggest tax increase in our history adjusted for inflation. It was an expiring tax that was actually paid off thanks to inflation. And that was the tax to pay off World War II. This was about 3 times as big. This is the biggest tax increase in the history of the Republic. Now, if you need a household figure, $3,100, and then they yell, that's not true, a guy at MIT says it's not true, ergo it's not true. Well, you noted the guy, Riley, said, well, that figure is still real, but here's their argument. You see, that's the money taken by the state. And the state is a wise steward of the public fisc. And therefore, this is his argument. Did I mention he's an academic? His argument is, if the state takes the money, the taxpayer receives a dollar for dollar benefit. And therefore, there is no cost, because they'll either get rebates or they'll get government services, and therefore there is no cost of what the government takes from you so long as the government holds it. It's just the loss to GDP. That's the difference. Now, will most households sit around the table and go, I'm curious about the Riley distinction, $800, $3,100. The president said it's to necessarily skyrocket your energy costs. That's the point. It's the only number that matters, in my opinion, simply because of the rhetorical nature of the issue. You get into a numbers battle, and you're just talking about which figure is the figure we're going to waste. But that gets lost.
Right. And also that is going to be...
Heritage worked in numbers. They said, immediate 46 cents a gallon. Right. But you do the math. Take $648 billion,
right,
which was in the president's budget, and divide it by 117 million American families, and see what it's going to cost the average American family. A lot of money.
Exactly.
We only got 10 minutes left, so
right.
we have to...
And also the voting part, that some states are going to get hammered because they produce, they absorb more. It's going to be truly unequal, so this thing should be non-partisan.
You're right, and the congressman's right. This isn't partisan. It's regional. It's New England and California against the rest of the country, and the votes have broken down that way in the Senate. This is not partisan. It's regional economic warfare.
When it comes to energy, you got to produce it, you got to distribute it, and you got to market it. And when the Congress got involved with electricity, because it was costing too much because they were burning oil on the East Coast, they decided to get in and deregulate it. Now, what the companies did, most of the major electric producers went to said, hey, It costs us to produce it. It costs us to distribute it. We're just going to market it. And that's what happened to your electric grids and that type of thing and created the problems. The other thing that I'm afraid of, and it's getting away from cap and trade, but is this health care deal. And the president was out there saying, I'm going to have this thing done this year. And one thing I've noticed is the alliance through the government, through the lobbyists, to GE. And when you watch your TV, every time now there's a health care advertisement, it's look what GE's doing for the medical records, this and the other thing. That needs to be stopped.
In the administrative budget, cap and trade was $648 billion.
For two programs, but that was not.
Yeah, and the new health care was $636 billion. So I think this is to fund the health care program in the back of their minds pretty clearly.
In the budget.
But Bill, you're forgetting
For now.
You're forgetting that $632 billion was a down payment on health care.
CBO said it'd cover 1/3 of the cost.
In short, as they say, if you think health care is expensive now, wait till it's free.
Hi, my name's Matt, and I am the organizer of the local Tea Parties. I wanted to thank you for coming. Thank you for coming and giving a truly frightening presentation. And two questions for you. One, I know you're from out of town. Can you recommend a local speaker that we could put on the agenda at the Tea Party? And two, are there any petitions or organizations that we can promote at the Tea Party? Because I think this is a good issue to bring up there to draw publicity to.
Yeah, I'm happy to come down. You're going to do this in the winter, right?
4th of July, Space Coast Stadium.
4th of July. This gentleman O'Brien at Florida State is a climatologist. I don't know how much he gets into the policy, but he can remind you, of the facts of the most emotional thread they pull down here. I'd have to get back to you on that because of the. You have to have somehow done something in your life that this is what you do now to really be conversant in it, and there's only a few of us.
Okay, Congressman's got my contact info, so thank you.
Fascinating and very motivational talk. Thank you very much for that. The cap and trade issue, sort of reminiscent of the whole spectrum of increasing government control, just growing like leaps and bounds. I'm really concerned about this loss of freedom and the state regulation on everything, federal in particular. It seems to me that the dominating factor is more about the Constitution. I mean, really, if you think this thing through, it gets to a constitutional issue. And I've been reading The 5,000-Year Leap, and I've come to realize that the founders said that morality has to be the foundation for what we do. And I'm seeing that economics and the love of money seems to be becoming more and more the major issue now. So that suggests to me that there has to be some kind of a morality revival or something among leaders. And I'm wondering if you see any evidence of that.
I'll tell you what I see. The alarmist industry have cloaked themselves in the mantle of morality, and they claim it's a moral issue. They say the science is certain, and yet their proposal would, under no scenario, do anything. All it would do is make us poorer, left to deal with something we always have to deal with, and which has always been a great threat to the poor. Climate, not climate change, climate, weather, always unpredictable, often severe weather. And you're going to leave us poorer to deal with it or wealthier. And you know who deals with the storm better, Bangladesh or Florida. And think about why. And everything distills to wealth. Now, just so you know, this is actually fairly amoral in the way you push it. Did you know that the road we're going down, China, in Red Hot Lies, I know China proposed to be given offsets to sell us on the basis of what their population would have been had they not had their particular family planning policy, as they euphemize it, in place. They say our population is X, and it would have been X plus maybe 1.3X, and we want to sell what our carbon footprint would have been in offsets because they call them reductions. Now, this is reprehensible, and about as illustrative of why you don't want to go down this road. And you know what? The EU and the UN said, well, that sounds like a good idea because we're not actually reducing emissions. We have to buy offsets. And about the Constitution, remember, it's not perfect. It's just an awful lot better than what we got now.
Okay, that clock back there says 11:25. We have to leave this room at 11:30. So I hate it, but we're going to have to stop the questions and vacate. Hopefully everyone is better informed now and working together amongst yourselves. You'll be able to make a significant difference in the direction this thing's going. I hope that you'll do that little survey that we passed out. My staff will shoot me if y'all don't do that and tell me my friends aren't grateful. So, do that so I can have a staff enthusiastic about having events like this again, having great speakers like Chris, maybe having Chris even come back another time, as Mr. Nye had mentioned. And remind you that, if you're coming to D.C., go to our website. We can help facilitate, make it nicer for your trip up there. We can, provide a full range of services for you, and that's why we're here to do that. Bringing this, genius here is all part of that service that we try and provide. So I want to thank Matt and Tim again for helping get Chris here before us. God bless you, and God bless America.